They told me not to talk about it. Not in school, not at home. Not even in a whisper when the wind carried sound like secrets. But now, here you are, watching this. Alone. Which means you must have felt it too. That tiny fracture in reality. That creeping suspicion that something beneath your everyday life isn't just off. It's wrong. And the moment I describe what happened in Mrs. Langston's 5th period history class, you'll feel it settle into your bones like a truth you always knew but never wanted to face. There are some stories that were buried for a reason, but this one clawed its way back up, and the question that started it all, the one no teacher ever answered, no parent ever dared explain, it came from a child's mouth, trembling, right before everything changed. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary, maybe, for anyone else. But in room 11 of Magnolia Middle School in Huntsville, Alabama, something snapped. I remember the way the light filtered through the beige blinds, faded sunlight cutting across dusty desks and forgotten textbooks, casting long shadows where kids should have only been pretending to learn. The air buzzed with that end-of-day tension, the kind that makes students twitchy and teachers weary. Mrs. Langston, worn and stiff in her slacks and chalk-stained sweater, was droning on about the Cold War, Cuban missiles, Khrushchev, Kennedy. When Marcus spoke up. Now Marcus didn't talk much. Small, brown-skinned, with shy eyes and a mind that wandered farther than the school fence ever could. He mostly kept to himself. But that day, when Mrs. Langston mentioned the space race and asked a throwaway question about American pride, Marcus raised his hand. Everyone turned, not because it was unusual for someone to answer, but because it was him. Quiet Marcus. Daydreamer Marcus. "My dad works at NASA," he said, voice cracking just a little. "He told me things. About the missions. About what they found." The room laughed, instantly, like it was a reflex. Not mean-spirited at first, just the kind of laughter middle schoolers deploy to smother discomfort. I caught the way Mrs. Langston stiffened, her red pen pausing mid-air. She looked at Marcus like he'd just uttered a slur or a curse, like he'd ripped a hole in the fragile veil of routine we all depended on. "Marcus," she said carefully, "that's not something we joke about in class." But Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't take it back. He just stared at her, lips slightly parted, confusion flickering behind his wide eyes. "I'm not joking," he whispered. Then the room changed. I don't mean the air got cold or the lights flickered. It wasn't a horror movie glitch, it was worse than that. It was too real. Like something shifted behind our eyeballs, something subtle but irreversible. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the door creaked open behind us. And walked a black man, not a teacher, not the principal, not security. Just a man, maybe late 30s, tall, sharp-jawed, in a charcoal suit with no wrinkles. Not a smile on his face, not a trace of friendliness. But he didn't look angry either. Just focused, surgical. Like he'd been sent in not by the school but by something else. And he walked straight to Marcus without acknowledging a single soul. No one stopped him. Not Mrs. Langston. Not the kids. Not even the hallway monitor. Mrs. Kilgore, who normally would have tackled a stranger for less. It was like he belonged, even though no one had ever seen him before. Not even Marcus until that moment. But when their eyes met, it was like they remembered each other. I swear to God. Marcus smiled. Only for a second, but it was there. Like the kind of smile someone gives when they've been waiting to be found. The man knelt beside his desk and whispered something in Marcus's ear. We didn't hear it. Not clearly. It wasn't in English. Wasn't in any language I knew. It sounded wrong. Like static with syllables. Like words meant for someone else's brain. And then Marcus stood up slowly, as if waking from a dream. He didn't grab his bag. Didn't look back. He just followed the man out of the room. And that should have been the end. But that's when the weirdness really began. Mrs. Langston didn't call the office. No one filed a report. Marcus's name was never mentioned again. When I brought it, the next day just in passing, like, "Hey, where's Marcus?" The other kids just blinked at me. "Marcus who?" they said. with no sarcasm. Like they genuinely had no idea. Even his desk was gone. Not empty, gone. As if it had never been there. At first I thought maybe I was going crazy. Maybe I imagined it. But then I checked the yearbook, Marcus J. Booker, page 47. He was there. Picture and all. But when I showed it to my friend Danielle, she just stared at the page and said, "That's not anyone in our grade. Even his name didn't trigger anything in them." I felt alone in a room full of strangers who should have known. And that's when I realized the question Marcus asked, the one that started it all, wasn't, "What did they find?" It was what he didn't say. It was the silence that followed, the secrets wrapped inside that one sentence. My dad works at NASA. Because what if that wasn't a flex? What if it wasn't about pride or family? What if it was a warning? I started to look deeper, into his dad, into the NASA records, into whispers online, buried forums with weird formatting and half-deleted threads. There were patterns, always a child, always a government affiliation, always a vanishing. But it wasn't until I found the video, the one that shouldn't exist, that I knew for sure this wasn't just a story. It was real. The clip was dated 1993, VHS scan, flickering tape. A black man in the same suit, same build, same face, walking into a school on the other side of the country, talking to another child. And when I compared the face, it was Marcus, but younger. This story doesn't belong to just one time, or one place, or one boy. It's a pattern, a message playing out in fragments across decades designed to be forgotten, to bury the truth under laughter, under routine, under 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays. And the worst part? I think it's still happening, because 2 nights ago I heard something in my baby sister's room. She just turned 3. She was talking in her sleep like kids do. But her voice changed. It got deeper, calmer, and she whispered, "He's coming. Don't tell Mom." I froze in the hallway. I wanted to believe it was a dream, some nonsense her brain concocted from cartoons. But then, in the silence that followed, the baby monitor crackled. Not with her voice, but with his. And he said a name, mine. So now I'm recording this, not for fame, not for views, for you. Because something is happening and I don't know if I'll still be here tomorrow. I don't know if you'll remember me after this video ends. But I need you to remember Marcus. Remember the man in the suit. Remember the question that no one ever answered. Because last night I heard footsteps outside my window and I swear to God, he was smiling. He was smiling, but when I ran to the window, heart slamming, legs like wet concrete, there was no one there, no sound. No footprints in the wet grass, just the shimmer of the street lamp flickering in a sick yellow rhythm, like it was keeping time with something I couldn't see. I stared into that empty yard longer than I should have, long enough for my mind to start inventing shapes in the dark, broad shoulders behind the oak tree, glints of movement near the garden hose. I told myself I was being paranoid, told myself I was tired. But when I finally backed away from the sewer glass, the baby monitor flared to life again. This time, it wasn't a voice. It was a laugh. Soft, mechanical, looped almost like a child's toy caught in an endless replay. But we don't have toys that laugh. We never bought her one. We don't even have a nanny cam, just the standard monitor with audio only. No video. I stood there in the dark, frozen. The laugh played once more, then stopped mid-giggle. Silence so hard it felt like it cracked my eardrums. And then, dead static. I didn't sleep. The next morning I tried to act normal. Made my sister breakfast. Kissed her forehead. Didn't ask about the voice, didn't say, "Do you remember what you said last night?" Because somewhere in me, in the deepest place, I knew I didn't want the answer. I just wanted to keep pretending. Like everyone else. Pretend the world works the way we're told. Sun rises, gravity keeps us grounded, and people don't just vanish into silence. But the cracks were showing. Everywhere. I found my journal that afternoon, the one I've kept since I was 13. It had entries about Marcus. The man in the suit. Everything I told you. But when I flipped to last Tuesday, the day it happened, the page was blank. Not erased, not torn, just never written. My penmanship jumped straight from Monday to Wednesday. The day of the vanishing didn't exist, like I'd skipped time, like something edited me. That's when I called Tasha. Now Tasha's not a friend, not anymore. We drifted after high school. Life got weird, she got weirder. But if anyone could help me untangle something this off, it was her. Back in junior year, she ran a podcast about real unsolved mysteries, the ones no one ever solved because they were never meant to be. Paranormal, psyops, MK Ultra whispers, government ghosts. You know the type. The kind that makes your skin crawl not because it's fake, but because it might not be. She picked up on the third ring, voice rough, groggy. "You sound like someone just walked over your grave," she said. "What's going on?" "I think I'm losing time," I whispered. "And I think someone's watching my sister." Silence, then a sigh. "You finally seeing it, huh?" "Seeing what?" I snapped, too quickly, too scared. "You remember what we saw back then at the science fair? With the VHS?" I didn't. I swore I didn't. She laughed, but it wasn't relief. It was bitterness. "You blocked it out. I knew it. That's why I never brought it up again." "Tasha, what the hell are you talking about? You asked me to burn the tape. You begged me. Said you couldn't sleep. That the man in the background of the footage kept smiling at you in your dreams. You said it wasn't Marcus we saw in that hallway. It was something wearing him." My throat closed. A weight fell behind my eyes. A memory tried to surface, but it was foggy, like trying to remember someone else's dream. I couldn't tell if she was lying. She always had a flair for the dramatic, always danced right on the edge of real and delusion. But what if she wasn't lying? What if I really did forget? That night I combed through every hard drive I owned, every thumb drive, old phones. I found nothing, except one file buried under a folder labeled Taxes 2017, a video, untitled, no thumbnail, and the timestamp read. I clicked play. The screen lit up with static, the kind you don't see anymore. Analog snow. Then a hallway, empty. Fluorescent lighting humming in a broken insect rhythm. The camera was shaky, like a child was holding it. And just barely, off to the left. A shape. Tall, dressed in charcoal, head tilted at a sick angle. The eye, but something was wrong with the way he moved. Frame by frame, it looked like he wasn't walking but being dragged forward, feet gliding, limbs stiff. The audio glitched, cutting in and out. Children laughing, a woman sobbing, a deep male voice repeating, "Do you remember now?" Over and over. The camera turned suddenly, and there I was. Younger, pale, eyes wide, looking straight into the lens. Then the screen went black. I shut the laptop. My hands were shaking, my ears rang like someone had screamed into them. And in that moment, I realized something that made my skin go ice cold. I didn't remember filming that video, or being in that hallway, or ever seeing the man outside of Marcus's story. What if that wasn't Marcus's memory? What if it was mine? What if I was remembering someone else's vanishing? I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face, and when I looked up into the mirror, something in my reflection lagged. I don't know how else to explain it. My head turned, but my reflection didn't, just for a blink. But it happened, and when I leaned closer, I saw something else, scratched into the glass so faint I had to fog it with breath to see. "Don't let him in twice." That's when the power cut. Everything went dark. The hum of the fridge, the baby monitor. Silence deeper than anything I'd ever known. And through that silence came a knock. One knock, deliberate. From the inside of my bedroom closet. I'm telling you this now because the memory's fading again. I can feel it. Every time I write something down, it goes fuzzy the next hour. Tasha stopped answering my calls. Her number says disconnected. I tried to visit her, but her house was boarded up like no one had lived there for years. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's real anymore. But there's one thing I do know. Last night, I found my old notebook buried behind the washing machine. Pages torn, but one entry still intact. Dated 4 years ago. Written in my own hand. It read, "If you're reading this, you've already let him in." Then the handwriting changed and the last line said, "Tell the next one before he smiles." I think you're the next one. For a long moment, I believed I had it all figured out. Like the final piece of a puzzle sliding perfectly into place, snapping the whole picture into sharp, undeniable focus. I stumbled upon an old news clipping, buried deep in the archives of the town library's microfiche reader. Yellowed, frayed, tucked between stories about a diner fire and a forgotten election scandal, it screamed something I wasn't ready for. The headline was blunt and cold. Local boy vanishes after school. Witnesses report strange figure. The date was nearly 20 years ago, but the details sent a chill crawling down my spine that made the hair on the back of my neck stand at attention. The boy's name was Marcus, the same Marcus I'd been haunted by in my own fractured memories. Same age, same school, same description. Down to the odd way the witnesses said he smiled right before he disappeared, like the smile knew something no one else did. The article was vague, but it mentioned a single eyewitness, an old janitor named Mr. Henderson, who claimed he heard the boy whisper a name no one else knew. That name was exactly what my sister had spoken into the baby monitor. And suddenly, it wasn't just a whisper lost in static. It was a thread pulling me toward something real, something tangible, something I thought I could grasp and hold. For the first time in months, I slept. Not well, but better. The next day, I tracked down Mr. Henderson's contact info in the town. Records. A name that popped up in property deeds, obituaries, and faded church bulletins. When I arrived at his house, the air felt thick with something unspoken, like I'd crossed into a place the town itself had forgotten, but hadn't forgiven. He was older than I expected. Skin like cracked leather, eyes sharp beneath bushy brows, voice rough like gravel dragged across glass. I told him I needed to understand what happened to Marcus to understand what I was starting to forget. Mr. Henderson didn't hesitate. His gaze pinned me in place. "You're chasing ghosts," he said, "but sometimes ghosts chase you back." Marcus wasn't lost to space or time. He was lost to what watches between both. I laughed nervously. I told him I didn't understand. He shook his head like he was warning me. "You're not crazy. They lied to you. But you don't. Want to know the truth?" Then, out of nowhere, his hand trembled, and from his pocket he pulled a small, ragged notebook, pages yellowed and edges torn. He handed it over, the weight of it heavier than anything I'd held before. Inside were fragmented notes, sketches of shadowy figures, names scratched out and rewritten, dates circled obsessively. It was a record, his record, of strange disappearances, whispers in the halls, children speaking languages no one taught them, doors opening on their own, and silent watchers seen from the corner of an eye. As I read, the air seemed to thicken, the room tilting just enough to unsettle my balance, and then, as if a switch had been flipped somewhere deep inside me, a memory crashed back, the edges jagged and bleeding into my present. I was 7, again, hiding beneath the staircase during a family gathering, overhearing adults whisper about the Watcher and the Smile, as if they were old curses passed down in hushed tones. My mother's voice, urgent and trembling, telling someone, on the phone, "We have to keep him away this time. The last time almost broke us." I blinked and looked up from the notebook. Mr. Henderson was watching me with something like pity or dread, his eyes haunted. "You see? It's been here all along. Watching, waiting. Not just for Marcus. For you. For your sister. For every time someone looks too close." I wanted to ask what it was, what he was talking about, but the words caught in my throat. I felt like I was drowning in half-truths and shadows. The notebook slipped from my fingers and landed open on the floor, revealing a scribbled drawing that made my blood run cold, an impossibly wide grin, stretching too far across a shadowed face, eyes empty but somehow knowing. And then, just like that, the house phone rang. I jumped, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Mr. Henderson picked it up, but as he spoke, his voice cracked, faltering, becoming almost a whisper. When he handed the receiver to me, I barely recognized the voice on the other end. A cold, distorted echo that repeated one phrase again and again. "He's already inside." The call ended. Silence swallowed the room. That night, as I sat staring at the notebook, the unease settled like poison in my veins. I realized that everything I'd thought was a resolution, every clue I'd clung to like a lifeline, was just another loop in the maze. That smile, the one I'd seen flicker in every corner of my memory and in every piece of evidence, wasn't just a symbol. It was a presence, a weight pressing down on the edges of reality and memory, eroding the line between what had been and what never was. And if it was inside now, if it had been inside from the start, then nothing was safe. And nothing was true. I turned back to the first chapter of my journal and read the last sentence again, the one that made me pause so long I could hear my own breath echoing in the dark. "Tell the next one before he smiles." The truth wasn't just hidden. It was a lie wrapped in another lie, a memory glitch engineered to keep me chasing shadows. And worse, it was watching, waiting for me to forget again, to stop looking, to let it smile. And now, as I share this with you, I'm not sure if I'm the hunter or the hunted anymore, because everything you thought you understood, everything I thought I knew, was just a rehearsal, a prelude to the part where you realize that the story you've been watching isn't over. It's just beginning, and you're right back where you started, forced to question every glance, every whisper, every smile you thought you'd escaped. If you thought you were safe before, watch again, look closer, because now, the smile is waiting for you. There is a strange comfort in knowing that you're not alone in the shadows, yet that comfort quickly turns to cold dread when you realize the company you keep isn't quite human, or at least, not as human as you thought. I began noticing the signs first as flickers on the edge of my vision, symbols carved into the backs of old wooden chairs, a pattern of scratches on the paint of an abandoned warehouse door, and that uncanny feeling of being watched even in the most crowded rooms. It wasn't just me. There were others, silent, scattered, but connected through something deeper than memory or time. They were there, watching this story unfold alongside me, whispering in code, communicating through dreams that bled into each other like overlapping static on a cracked television screen. Late one night, the phone buzzed. No number, just a text, a sequence of numbers and letters like a cipher waiting to be unlocked. At first, I dismissed it as a prank or a glitch, but then the same message appeared on my computer screen, on my bathroom mirror, even etched faintly, into the fog on my windshield. The symbols started appearing in places I had no way of explaining, as if someone, or something, was trying to speak through the veil, a secret language encoded in the fabric of my reality. They weren't random. They matched patterns I'd seen in the notebook, in Mr. Henderson's frantic scribbles, and in a batch of found footage from 20 years ago, the kind of recordings the government never released but somehow leaked through, back channels to those desperate enough to look. This was no coincidence. This was a network, a silent army of fractured minds and forgotten souls trapped in a shared nightmare that refused to end. The realization was both terrifying and oddly reassuring. We were pieces of the same puzzle, fragments of memories erased and rewritten, victims of a truth so buried it needed to wear the cloak of madness to survive. In one of those shared dreams, I met her, the observer. She appeared between the shadows and the flickering light, a woman with eyes too knowing for comfort, someone who seemed to exist both inside and outside the story. She didn't speak like we do. Her voice was more a feeling, a tremor in the air, the weight of something ancient and patient. She told me without words that what we remember isn't ours alone. that our identities are stitched together by forces we don't understand, puppeteered by hands that have been watching since before any of us were born. Her presence was a warning and a promise, like she was the only one brave enough or cursed enough to see the whole picture, to tell the truth that no one else dared whisper. "You were right all along," she seemed to say. But knowing is just the beginning. As the lines between memory and reality blurred, I started questioning everything: who I was before this started, what parts of my life were mine, and what parts were scripted shadows planted to keep me compliant. The symbols, the shared dreams, the cryptic messages, they weren't just random phenomena, they were a language, a code designed to control or perhaps awaken, to separate those who would see the truth from those who would remain blind. The deeper I dove, the heavier the weight of control pressed down on my mind, as if every thought was being monitored, every emotion catalogued. It wasn't paranoia. It was a calculated psychological labyrinth designed to trap us in loops of confusion and doubt. And somewhere beyond that labyrinth, in the silence that stretched between the cracks of our fractured consciousness, something waits. Something that has watched not only Marcus and me, but every lost voice that ever tried to break free from the invisible cage. It doesn't just watch. It learns, it adapts, it thrives on our fear and our forgetfulness. So here we are, caught between what we remember and what they want us to forget, between the watcher and the watched, between the truth hidden in plain sight and the lies we tell ourselves to keep going. The story you've been following is no longer just a tale to observe. It's a call to action, an invitation into a deeper conspiracy where nothing is as it seems, and everyone's identity is up for negotiation. The observer's eyes are still on us, and as you sit there feeling the weight of every word and every silence, know this: you are no longer just a viewer. You are part of this. You always were, and the smile is waiting. There comes a moment in every story, every fractured, tangled journey when the question shifts. It stops being about what happened, or who is behind it all, and instead, it asks something far heavier, far more intimate. Why? Why did this have to happen? What does it reveal about us, the fragile, broken, endlessly searching creatures we call human? For me, that moment came not with a shout or a revelation, but with a whisper so quiet, it felt like the last breath of a fading dream. I sat alone in the dim glow of the flickering screen, the cipher messages dancing like ghosts on the edges of my vision when it hit me. This story, this mystery, this invisible force watching from the shadows, was never about control or secrets buried deep in government vaults. It was about fear. Our fear of the unknown, our fear of ourselves, and the lengths we go to bury the parts of us that don't fit the picture we want to see in the mirror. The mystery was a mirror itself, reflecting every crack, every lie, every unspoken pain we carry. And in that reflection, I found my confession. I was afraid to look too closely at what I might find inside. Afraid that the truth would shatter me, that it would tear apart the fragile seams holding my mind and memories together. Because what if the thing watching, the thing waiting, was not outside me but inside? What if the biggest mystery was the self I never truly understood, the parts I hid from even myself? The choice stretched before me like a canyon with no bottom. To embrace this terrifying awakening, to let the truth unravel me until only raw, aching clarity remained, or to retreat back into the comforting darkness of ignorance, to pretend none of this ever touched me. It was a choice with no safety net, no second chances. Either I stepped forward and became the broken witness of my own unraveling, or I turned away and let the story consume someone else. But in that moment I understood something deeper, that the fear itself was a cage, and breaking free meant surrendering to the unknown. I thought about the black man who walked into that classroom, about the laughter that tried to drown out the truth, about the whispers no one heard and the names no one dared to speak. I thought about all of us, silent and watching, connected by memories erased, by dreams shared and lost. We weren't victims or villains. We were human, flawed, fragile, terrified, and somehow still searching for meaning in the dark. The screen flickered one last time and the cipher blinked back at me. A message I couldn't quite decipher, but understood perfectly in my bones. The truth was never a destination. It was the journey itself, the fear, the hope, the silence between the beats of our hearts. And as the darkness closed in around me, I whispered to the void, to the watcher, to whatever waited in the shadows. I am here. I see you. And I am ready. To wake, because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that save us. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.